reclusive billionaire Howard Hughes dies, and a handwritten will is quickly dismissed as a fake.
I am absolutely stunned that anybody would take it seriously at all.
A chance encounter leads to the promise of unimaginable wealth.
I didn't ask him for anything. I didn't expect anything. What is going on here? This can't be happening.
A controversy that pits one man against a billion-dollar corporation.
He lied under oath. He lied to the American people.
Now fresh evidence could rewrite the story of one of the most mysterious figures in American history. December 1967. Melvin Dumar, a 23-year-old mine worker from Gabbs, Nevada, is about to have an extraordinary and life-changing encounter.
My wife had left me. I was married and had a small child. I decided I would go to California to see if I couldn't reconcile with my ex-wife, and that was the 29th of December of 1967. I was driving south, and I had to stop to relieve myself. And there was a dirt road that went off to my right, and so I decided I'd get off the highway and drive up the dirt road a little ways. And that's where I found this person laying in the middle of the dirt road. I thought I'd found a dead person, and then I saw him start moving, so I was super relieved that this person wasn't dead, and so I asked him if I could take him to a doctor or a hospital, or if I should go get the sheriff. He didn't want anything to do with doctors or hospitals or police or anything. All he asked me is if I could take him to Vegas, and since I was going that way anyway, I said I'd be happy to have him come along with me, and I'd give him a ride to Vegas. It was quite cold that evening, and the first part of the ride, after I got him in the car for the first almost probably an hour, he just trembled violently. He was just shaking. I think he was a little hard of hearing because I recall telling him my name half a dozen times or more. He was asking me what I did for a living, and I told him that I'd been in the Air Force, and when I'd got out of the Air Force, I was trying to get a job in the aircraft industry, and I was in Southern California, and I actually went to Hughes Aircraft in Fullerton, California, and applied for a job. And that's when he told me who he was, that if I wanted a job, that he could arrange it. In his words, he could arrange it because he was Howard Hughes and he owned Hughes Aircraft, and that's when I thought he was nuts.
Howard Hughes, a thrill-seeking aviator, Hollywood playboy, billionaire industrialist, casino baron, and the most notorious and mysterious recluse in American history. Hughes has not been seen in public for more than a decade.
You know, I'd heard of Howard Hughes. Of course, I didn't know what he looked like or anything, but this person looked like a vagrant that you should see in Skid Row. We drove on and got into Las Vegas, asked him where he wanted to go, and he wanted to go to the Sands Hotel. And just when he got out, he asked me if I had any money. I thought, well, he wants to buy another bottle of wine or a cup of coffee or something, so I gave him some change. He thanked me and walked away from the car, and I left and never seen him again.
Eight and a half years after Melvin's encounter with the vagrant, Howard Hughes is dead. Compared to the tall, handsome aviator of the popular imagination, a man who dated more Hollywood starlets than Errol Flynn, Hughes is a Hughes is practically unrecognizable. His sudden death reminds the world of his extraordinary life. He inherited his father's fortune, but was orphaned at 18. As a young movie producer and director, he stunned Hollywood with his daring and his ambition. He dated Hollywood's most desirable starlets, who could not resist his good looks, quiet charisma, and vast wealth. He ran a successful business empire, founded a medical research institute, and brought vision and audacity to the brand new world of global aviation.
Smashing all records, Howard Hughes outdoes Jules Verne's wildest dreams. Around the world from New York to New York in 4 days. A real sportsman, a daring aviator, a true pioneer of the world's airways.
Hughes's most controversial project was the so-called Spruce Goose, a massive flying boat made of wood, which flew only once.
With its 8 motors aroar, the 200-ton monster, the biggest plane ever built, takes a modest hop.
Those closest to Hughes remember him as a force to be reckoned with. Paul Wynne was Hughes's personal secretary in the early 1960s.
He was a visionary. He saw things coming. He had the ability to focus on something. For example, when he built the flying boat or when he did the round-the-world flight, he focused on it to the point of almost obsession. I would say that he probably is one of the pioneering geniuses of not only our time, but maybe of all time.
But his obsessions also led to reclusive behavior, paranoia, and a crippling and lifelong obsessive-compulsive disorder. As he approaches 60, Hughes's daily regime becomes increasingly complex and bizarre.
I was under instruction from Mr. Hughes himself he would call the office and have them alert me to come up, and I was supposed to take 15 minutes and wash my hands with a brush, scrub them with soap so that my hands were clean. When I was at the house, I was not to handle any of the doorknobs or that sort of thing with a bare hand, always with some Kleenex. I had a clipboard that I would put the memos or whatever on that I had for him, and I would hand it out toward him, and he would release the clip and take the papers. I didn't physically hand the papers to him with my bare hands. As you might expect a wealthy, powerful man to be, he was quite demanding.
Despite these eccentricities, Hughes's ambition and drive remain undimmed.
There was no question in my mind then or now about his mental capacity. He was incredibly brilliant. There was no question about that. We had a sign on the office wall that said, "The boss isn't always right, but he's always the boss."
In 1966, Hughes moves to Las Vegas to expand his business empire, but he becomes increasingly disconnected from the world. Hughes has developed an addiction to codeine, and his mental and physical health deteriorates. Jeff Schumacher has documented Hughes's time at the Desert Inn, Las Vegas.
They carry him up the fire escape and move him into the 9th floor penthouse of the hotel. Very protected. Even after the public found out he was there was really no option for people to get up there. Nobody talked to him. The public didn't see him around. He was very reclusive.
Most of Hughes's closest aides are Mormons. Hughes is not a Mormon himself, but he feels they are trustworthy and loyal.
And his aides, in my view, did not take good care of him. It had gotten worse and worse. And by that time, it had reached crisis levels. He was not getting the medical care that he needed. Many of the drug addictions had taken a toll on his organs. He had lost a great deal of weight. He was really a very poor specimen at that point.
Hughes did what Hughes wanted. He was the guy in charge, and if he wanted to take drugs, I mean, he would have somebody do it, and he would find a way because he had the money and wherewithal to accomplish it.
On August 5th, 1976, Hughes, age 70, is flown to a hospital in Houston, but he is dead on arrival.
At the time he died, he was about 90 pounds. His hair was long and unkempt, and he had needles broken off in his arms, from injections.
Hughes has died an extremely wealthy man. He is worth over $2 billion. He is twice divorced and has no children. Incredibly, he has not left a will.
We didn't know what was going to become of the company. I think everyone pretty much assumed that whatever will he had would leave everything to the medical institute. And so we didn't know what was going to happen, who would take charge. There was real apprehension, yes.
A frantic search begins immediately. Executives at the Hughes Company place ads in newspapers across America, seeking information about Hughes's will. With such vast riches at stake, opportunists, hoaxers, and scam artists are lining up to try their luck at the greatest jackpot in Vegas history.
I understand there were something like maybe 35 or 36 wills that were submitted to the county clerk's office. It's purported wills, let's put it that way.
And for a gas station owner from Gabbs, Nevada, it's the beginning of an incredible adventure. Howard Hughes, the aviator, industrialist, and full-time eccentric, is dead. He leaves an estate worth over $2 billion. Executives in the Hughes organization are desperate to find a will.
I think mainly because I'd been to law school, I was an attorney. They kind of centered on me to work with the attorneys and others who were looking for the will, because I had been around a long time. I had been with Hughes personally and so forth.
A search of the archives reveals a will written when Hughes was only 19. His parents had died, and Hughes had inherited his father's oil drill company, worth millions of dollars.
We had a copy of the 1925 will, which had been in the files of the Houston attorneys. It was not a lengthy will. It was maybe 10, 12 pages as I remember, but the bulk of it was to go to medical research.
But the document has no legal value whatsoever.
It was unsigned. It was just a carbon copy. You have to verify that it's you, that it's your signature, and you have to have witnesses that you actually signed it.
Handwritten memos reveal that Hughes had intended to revise his will several times.
There was a memo from Hughes calling together the people who were going to witness his will. It turned out that there were some blanks left in it for him to write in some personal bequests, and there was one too many lines, and he didn't know what to do, so he said, well, do this later, and later never came. Everything was put off. Time and time again, he had to be pressured to get him to meet deadlines, to sign documents. So he was the world's worst procrastinator.
But 3 weeks after Hughes's death, there's a potential breakthrough. An official at the headquarters of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints finds an unidentified envelope on his desk, addressed to the president of the Mormon Church. Inside, there is a 3-page handwritten will. It is signed Howard Hughes. Filled with misspellings, the will leaves $1.56 billion to various charitable organizations, including the Mormon Church itself, the Boy Scouts of America, and the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. $470 million is to be split between a select group of aides. $156 million is left to Hughes's first cousin, William Loomis. $156 million split equally between his 2 ex-wives, Ella Rice and Jean Peters. And $156 million will go to a completely unknown 32-year-old man named Melvin Dumar. The same Melvin Dumar who had kindly offered an indigent a ride in the Nevada desert 8 years earlier. Is this long-awaited proof that he really was Howard Hughes? A reporter tracks down Dumar in Willard, Utah.
He just asked me if I'd heard about it before and if I'd seen it, and I told him no. I was scared to death, because I knew that I would be flooded with, reporters and be hounded and everything.
$2 billion hangs in the balance. A scrawled 3-page document, as well as Melvin himself, are about to come under the scrutiny of a court and an entire nation.
It did puzzle me, as to why he would even mention me in his will, because when I found him, I didn't ask him for anything. I didn't expect anything. I was only glad that I come along and could help somebody in need, and I didn't care whether he was rich or poor or whether he was a bum or who he was.
But rumors quickly surface that the will is a forgery. Melvin, knowing he may be a suspect, contacts his attorney, Roger Dudson.
Oh, I think like everyone else in the entire country, I was shocked. Yeah, I was very surprised to learn that one of my former clients had been named in the Howard Hughes will. For Melvin to be a potential beneficiary of millions of dollars, that was, quite unbelievable.
Dudson accepts Melvin's account that he had no knowledge of the will before hearing it on the news.
Melvin insisted that he had not delivered the will. Therefore, we had this television interview where Melvin made a plea. He said somebody needs to come forward and explain all of this. They should explain how they got the will and where it came from.
If the will is found to be invalid, an aunt of Howard Hughes and several cousins stand to inherit his fortune, bequeathed automatically to the next of kin. The family lines up a team of expensive lawyers led by Jim Dilworth, who identify Melvin as the prime target in their legal challenge.
Dilworth introduced himself. He had a Texas drawl, and he told the court that he was going to show that this was a forgery, that Melvin Dumar is a forger, and that he's going to end up in prison. And that was how it started out.
Dudson believes the financial might of the Hughes empire was backing the family, and that the Hughes executives were afraid of losing control.
The money, I'm sure, to fight the will came out of the corporation because there were many executives and people that would have been affected adversely had the will been probated. I was naive. I really didn't stop and think of the power that money might have in a legal case. I was idealistic.
Lawyers on all sides agree to submit the will and the envelope to forensic analysis. And the results will turn this case upside down.
Well, an attorney shouldn't ever think about killing someone. I wanted to know then a lot more facts.
Gas station owner Melvin Dumar is due to receive $156 million in a will apparently written by Howard Hughes and left anonymously at the Mormon church headquarters. But who delivered the will? Forensic analysis reveals a thumbprint on the envelope. And it belongs to none other than Melvin Dumar himself.
That's when I told him that, yes, that I had handled it and I was the one that took it to the church office building. I think that was quite a shock to Roger and some of the attorneys, but...
Well, an attorney shouldn't ever think about killing someone, but I certainly was upset. And I didn't think of killing Melvin, but I certainly just was totally frustrated. I wanted to know then a lot more facts.
Melvin provides some facts and a new version of the story.
When Hughes died, about 2 weeks after he died, a man came into my station and started asking me questions, about who I was and if I was Melvin Dumar. Then he mentioned Howard Hughes. He asked me if I'd ever met Howard Hughes, and I told him, well, I met some bum one time that told me he was Howard Hughes, but whether it was him or not, I wasn't sure. He started asking me about, wouldn't it be nice if somebody like you was named in a will of Howard Hughes? And I thought, that's impossible. So I just kind of shined him on. Then another customer came into the station.
The mysterious visitor does not identify himself, but he does leave Melvin a parting gift.
One of my books was open on a desk there. Right on the top of it was an envelope, and I read it on there. It said something like, "Dear Mr. McKay, please see that this will is delivered after my death to the Clark County Courthouse." And I thought, this is just weird.
David McKay was a former president of the Mormon Church in Salt Lake City.
Even though you think somebody's pulling a joke on you, there's always that in the back of your mind that maybe perhaps they're not. And so I steamed it open and took a 3-page will out and read it. It didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, and especially when I seen my name in it. And in fact, it scared me. And that's when I thought, oh my God, what is going on here? This can't be happening.
We didn't know quite what to think, because here's a mystery man now thrown into the mix, which isn't too credible. And I suspect that's one reason why Melvin didn't tell us, is because he knew we wouldn't believe it.
I decided to take it to the Mormon church, and when I got in the church office building, there was security guards there and everything. I asked them, I said, is the president of the church here? And they said, yes, but you can't go in to see him because he's in a meeting. Having this in my possession, that will, whether it was true or whether it was false, was like having a hot potato handed to you, and I just didn't want to hold it any longer than I absolutely had to. And so there was an office there that was open, and I just walked in, laid it right in the middle of the desk, and walked out. The following day, I heard on the news that a mysterious woman had delivered Howard Hughes' will to the Mormon Church headquarters. I just felt, I said, well, if they think a mysterious woman delivered it, I'm just going to go along with it and just, agree with it.
Despite the unreliability of his client, Dutson is convinced of Dumar's innocence.
No, there's no way that Melvin could have done anything like this, and I don't think there's any way that he could have been involved in any kind of a conspiracy. I drafted a disclaimer of the whole thing, that he had lied in his deposition and that he apologized, and of course they screamed loud, but that's what I had to do to keep him from perjuring himself.
The opposing legal team are now completely convinced the will is a hoax.
My reaction was that it's absolutely preposterous. There's so much wrong with it that you can poke holes in it, that I am absolutely stunned that anybody would take it seriously at all.
The document itself comes under close scrutiny. Handwriting experts on both sides compare the will with Hughes's handwritten memos.
You can find a handwriting expert who will testify however you want him to testify. Maybe it's a situation of how much you pay the guy, I don't know.
We estimated that their lead handwriting expert may have received up to as much as $250,000, which in today's terms would be in the millions. They had the money to spend. We did not. Our handwriting experts did not require an awful lot of money to testify. And these are handwriting experts that had testified throughout Europe in some very high-profile, important cases, both criminal and civil, and had impeccable credentials.
The experts debate the finer points of Hughes's handwriting for weeks, and the jury is left entirely confused. But the will's opponents suggest there are other clear signs of fakery. Noah Dietrich, the former CEO of the Hughes empire, is named in the will as executor of the estate, but Hughes has not spoken to him for 20 years.
Hughes, after having fired Noah Dietrich, certainly would not name him the executor of his will. I mean, it just defies anybody's imagination. Noah Dietrich was a persona non grata.
They also point out that the will is replete with errors and countless misspellings.
It mentioned the Spruce Goose to go to the city of Long Beach. Well, first of all, he hated the name Spruce Goose. Everybody knows that. Terrible misspellings in the will. Now, Hughes might misspell a word here and there, but he certainly knew how to spell the word divided. One of the things that stuck out was the misspelling of the word Lummis. His aunt Annette Lummis had more or less raised him after his mother died, so he would not misspell their name.
The misspellings, the spacing, use of certain words and striking over of certain words, that was not uncommon. The other side of the coin is a strong argument that if there was a forger, certainly would have bought a cheap dictionary and made sure that the spelling of words was accurate.
If the will is real, then the man Melvin encountered in the desert must have been Hughes. But is it likely that the reclusive and extremely frail billionaire even left Las Vegas?
I was up at the 6th floor of the Desert Inn a couple of times. You had to have a special key to get up the elevator that far. When you came off the elevator, there was a desk there, a security guy. There was somebody with Hughes 24 hours a day. There was no way that Hughes could come or go without anyone knowing it, number one. Number two, Hughes basically usually never wore any clothes. He would have to have somebody get some clothes for him.
They said he absolutely could never have been able to leave the hotel because they were always there and watching him, and it couldn't have happened. We didn't believe them.
Dutson claims the aides had been given a script and they were sticking to it.
One of the aides stated that, he had been given something in writing that explained the details of when that happened and what he was supposed to say.
But as the trial reaches its climax, a new witness appears, a man who may finally confirm Melvin's story.
I received a call from a man who claimed that he had delivered the will.
Halfway through a trial that could authenticate the Howard Hughes will and make gas station owner Melvin Dumar a multimillionaire, a witness appears who could blow the case wide open.
I had received a lot of calls and a lot of letters from a lot of kooks. But as I questioned this man, he just said he did not want to be involved at all, except he had been told that he had to notify me that he was the man who had delivered the will. He had received a call using a code name that he had used when he did jobs for Howard Hughes. Mainly, he was a bagman. It was implied in his testimony that he had done illegal favors for Howard Hughes.
The man, Levain Forsyth, gives evidence in a deposition, and Dutson is slowly convinced.
We found a lot of evidence that supported his claim. He had an envelope that had Howard Hughes' handwriting on it that had been given to him that we validated as being Howard Hughes' handwriting by our experts. So I felt confident that he indeed was the person who delivered the will to Melvin Dumar.
Melvin is one step closer to the promise of extraordinary wealth and a life transformed.
I did think that, that possibly if it ever did come true, that I would inherit something. I thought that for a moment that I would like to buy a big ranch in the mountains somewhere where I could get away from everybody and just go hunting and fishing in privacy because I love to hunt and fish. And so that's about the only thing I fantasized about.
We, of course, thought that we had proven our case sufficiently to win. Quite a few of the court personnel expressed to me privately that they thought that we had won the case. It was surprising how many of the news media thought that we had won the case.
But the case for the will takes a serious hit when the alleged delivery man, Forsyth, flees Las Vegas before giving evidence in court.
His attorney showed up, but Forsyth did not show up. His attorney told us that he was on an airplane, or getting on an airplane to go back up to Anchorage, that he had received a threat to his life if he said anything about Hughes, and it became public record, and so Forsyth didn't want any more of that. He took off.
After months of testimony, the jury deliberates for just 3 days and returns their verdict. The will is a forgery.
I was devastated. I just, in fact, I was so emotionally upset. I knew it was going to happen, but it still was a shock.
Disappointed, yes. Surprised, yes. But that's the way the system works. Had Melvin told the truth immediately after he received the will, his credibility would have withstood everything that happened. But he lost credibility with me, but mainly with the jury, with the world. Yeah. Shortly afterwards, we started getting quite a bit of information that there had been some corruption and that there had been a number of things that were improper. The preventing witnesses from coming forward and the selection of the jury. So we looked into it somewhat. We did not have credible proof that there had been anything wrong, but we've always had our suspicions, but we did not have clear proof that could legitimately be presented to the court.
Despite the court's decision, no criminal charges are filed against Melvin Dumar. Hughes' estate is split among 22 cousins, and one of them, William Loomis, will take control of the Hughes empire. Melvin is discounted by the public as a fraudster and a failure.
For a long time, I went into a state of depression, and I was so depressed. It was like I just existed. I had very few friends at all. I was so upset. You know, I loved to write songs and I loved to sing, and there for about 20 years, I wouldn't even listen to the radio.
After 30 years, Melvin has put his past behind him and the case is almost forgotten. In 2005, he happens to meet a former FBI agent, Gary Magnuson. Magnuson takes an interest in Melvin's story.
I was the organized crime program coordinator in Las Vegas for 16 years. I've had a lot of dealings with people that hide the truth.
As I was telling him, I was watching him, and I was almost like reading him. And in my mind, I was thinking to myself that, Gary is not believing a thing I am saying.
The fact that he wanted to reopen all of this struck me as being either he's crazy and he enjoys the punishment he received in the press, or he really believes what he's saying.
Magnuson decides to reopen a now cold case. He tracks down former Hughes employees and other witnesses from the trial, and he discovers some compelling information. He's convinced there is evidence that shows Hughes left the hotel in December 1967.
There were no aides on duty. During that 3-day period, there were no meals served to any of the aides who lived on the 8th floor of the Desert Inn. Additionally, during that period, there were no phone calls out of those rooms that the aides lived in. So that shows to me that since they weren't there, Howard Hughes was not there either.
But why would Hughes have visited the desert, and in particular, a barren spot named Lido Junction?
Howard Hughes began buying up mining properties all throughout Nevada. He bought hundreds of properties for millions of dollars. I went to the courthouse in Goldfield, Nevada, which is in Esmeralda County, and there are stacks and stacks of property records, most of which are mine. And I began paging through this book, looking for Howard Hughes or one of the names of his corporations and so on, and began seeing a number of them, time and time again. Howard Hughes Corporation, such and such a mine. And so I was able to find the locations. I believe there were 32 mines, a cluster of mines, purchased by Howard Hughes that were at the end of that dirt road where he was found dumped.
But in 2007, a new witness comes forward with a surprising story. Guido Darrow is a pilot and former manager of the Hughes Airfield in Las Vegas.
Well, I was the resident manager of North Las Vegas Air Terminal, as well as being involved in aviation activities there. And the owner of the airport surreptitiously sold it to Mr. Hughes, and I was informed one day that I would be working for them the next morning for the Hughes Tool Company. I had been selected because of my ability as a pilot and my knowledge of the area. Mr. Hughes wanted Las Vegas to be the terminus for the to-be-built supersonic airplane. And they had asked me if I would do site location work.
In 1967, Hughes himself decides he wants to go along for the ride.
I was contacted by one of his assistants, Mr. Howard Eckersley, who told me to take a passenger. It was strictly, I was an employee and I did what I was told to do, and actually we really got into the seriousness of it. What we were doing was serious flying.
Darrow has a lucrative business on the side, taking advantage of Nevada's liberal attitude towards prostitution.
Well, the midnight special was we would fly you for a fee over to the legal house of ill repute, which was across the mountains, about a 30-minute flight. Prostitution was illegal in the city, but legal in the rest of the state. The Hughes Tool Company knew about it. They had investigated me thoroughly. I had been assigned other duties now as an administrative assistant to take care of Mr. Hughes's friends who came to town. He wasn't going to go out with anybody. So very important people came to the city expecting to be entertained.
Darrow's account of what happened next may finally confirm the identity of the man that Melvin picked up in December 1967.
His two main obsessions that I could see were aircraft first and women second. There's no way a man with his appetites for aircraft and women could stay locked up in a hotel room for 3 years without leaving. I mean, that's unbelievable.
In 1977, an alleged Howard Hughes will is judged a fake by the Las Vegas jury. But 30 years later, a crucial witness comes forward. Guido Darrow claims to have flown Hughes to the Cottontail Ranch, a brothel in the Nevada desert, just 6 miles from the spot where Dumar says he picked up Howard Hughes.
We landed and went up to the house and were buzzed in by the maid, and the girls made the lineup, and I noticed that he selected, without any hesitation, a very pretty redheaded lady. I would say that she was the class of the field. Very beautiful woman, mature, red hair, and when she smiled broadly, she had a diamond, a small diamond in her left incisor up at the top.
Her trick name is Sunny, and a few weeks later, just after Christmas, Hughes cannot resist a return visit.
The women had decorated the bar with Christmas lights and a little Christmas tree and jolly season and wearing Santa caps. He went back with Sunny, and I succumbed to the, what would you say, the enticements of the young ladies in having a drink. Johnny Walker Black. And I had another one. And it hit me because I was tired. So I asked Beverly Harrell, the owner, if I could take a nap. And she said, well, you can't sleep out here. You'll make the place look like a flop house. So she took me back into an area that was off limits to John's. But she said, you can lay down in the banquette and take a nap. And so I did. And the next thing I knew, I woke up, it was after 4 o'clock in the morning, and the maid was shaking me awake. And I got up and I went into the lounge area, and the vacuum cleaner's going, and it's obvious they've closed. I said, where's my friend? And the maid informed me, well, he left a long time ago. I said, what do you mean he left? I have the keys to the airplane. Where'd he go? Well, he left. I was in deep trouble. And, I was 28 years old. This was a huge job for me. And I thought that I was going to get fired. And so I flew back to town and landed and got an hour or two sleep, and then went into my office and sat behind the desk and waited for the phone to ring. And it marked the last time I ever spoke to or saw Howard Hughes. But I got promoted. Nothing was ever said to me.
Darrow is soon offered a high-flying job at a new airline in California. But first, the Hughes executives want to ensure his silence.
They took all of the pages out of my commercial pilot's logbook that had anything to do with flights for the Hughes Tool Company, and then I was asked to sign a non-disclosure agreement, which I did, which was notarized. No, it wasn't until 2004 that I picked up a newspaper, and in this story, for the first time, it was published where Melvin Dumar alleged he picked up Mr. Hughes. And immediately it struck me, and the time, the date, and everything. So I said to my wife, oh my God, I said, this fellow Dumar did pick up Howard Hughes.
The dates match. Darrow calls Melvin Dumar on the telephone.
And then we kind of played a little game. He was very wary of me, and I wasn't of him. I just wanted to ask him a couple of questions. I asked him, what did Howard Hughes look like and what did he have on? And it matched. I asked him if he had a hat on or a jacket, that kind of thing. Hair, what did he look like? It sounded to me like Mr. Dumar saved his life. He was injured when Dumar found him, and filthy and laying in a ditch. So I was convinced.
Representatives of the Hughes estate are unconvinced by Darrow's account. Peggy Tomsick was the attorney for Bill Gay, one of Hughes's key executives.
No one who was in a position of being entrusted with the richest man in the world would get drunk, fall asleep, and leave him and find out he was gone, and instead of calling and trying to get some help to find him, simply getting in a plane and flying back and no one ever talking to him and him not getting fired, I think is just not believable. And I think it's also not believable that the richest man in the world, who supposedly was a recluse and had a germ phobia, would not have someone, if he was having some affair with a prostitute flown into his location in Nevada. So I think, one, the credibility just didn't hold out, and I think the facts didn't.
I think Mr. Darrow, even though I've never met him personally, I think he's a very gracious man, and I see no reason why he would make up anything.
He is a very credible witness. It made sense. It tied the loose ends together. Why was the old man up there? What happened to him? And so on. And it tied the whole story together.
Why would I come forward and risk my reputation at my age and subject myself to criticism when I don't have a dog in this hunt? I've been offered no money. I've sought no money. I've never even met Melvin Dumar.
Gary Magnuson finds more evidence of Hughes' secret flights to spend time with Sonny.
He lived on the 9th floor of the Desert Inn. He was 6'4" and weighed about 94 pounds at his death. He wasn't a heavy man. Would not be difficult to carry him down the stairs. When he felt good, he could say to them, "I want to go see Sonny." I went to Western Nevada a number of times. I spoke with a lot of people. I spoke with several former prostitutes that worked in the brothel circuit. I found 2 who remembered Sonny very well. He had a black bag which contained feminine hygiene products, disinfectants. Even though he did not have sex, so I don't want to get into too much detail, but he did not have physical sex with her.
One of Hughes' most trusted executives, John Mayer, comes forward and supports the story.
He provided me information that Howard Hughes had been in Tonopah at the Mizpah Hotel on at least one occasion. He told me that he personally had taken Howard Hughes to the Cottontail brothel to see Sonny.
But skeptics wonder why Darrow did not come forward during the original trial.
To wait 28 years and then suddenly claim, "Look what happened," just shows you there's no merit to it.
He died 10 years after I left the Hughes Tool Company. So as a great deal of time went by and I was living in California and I didn't pay any attention to the, quote, Mormon will until later.
In June 2006, Melvin Dumar hires a new lawyer and files suit against the executors of the Hughes estate, claiming he was cheated out of his share. He demands $156 million, plus damages and interest. Attorney Peggy Tomsick was hired to represent the opposition.
I started investigating the record for Mr. Dumar. I frankly was quite shocked. I found that Mr. Dumar, from the very beginning, had woven a series of stories that he told not only under oath during interviews with 10 to 15 lawyers present, but he told in an interview on television. He told to a reporter things that were absolutely not true. There was at least what appeared to be a little bit of a pattern or practice of Mr. Dumar and his wife to create schemes to get things. As I understand it, he'd been charged with check forgery. As I understand reading the transcript, his wife, Bonnie, had been convicted of welfare fraud. Mr. Dumar is an admitted liar. He lied under oath. He lied to the American people. He lied to a reporter. And for people now to try to clean him off and feel sorry for him is sad, because who they should feel sorry for are all the people whose reputations he's tried to ruin.
On January 9th, 2007, the federal district court dismisses Dumar's lawsuit, stating that his claims had been fully and fairly litigated in Las Vegas back in 1978. In the eyes of the law, Melvin will always be branded a liar.
I just thought it was futile to try to reopen it and to have some of the judges and stuff just laugh about it and just make a mockery of it. You know, I didn't see the humor in it at all. I didn't think that we had a snowball's chance in hell of ever winning because of the amount of money and stuff involved.
If we had been given our day in court with the new witnesses and the new evidence that we have, there's no doubt in my mind we could have proven the burden of proof would be on our side.
Absolute proof of the will's authenticity remains elusive. Melvin is many things to many people. A con man, an unwitting player in a sophisticated hoax, or simply a man who tells the truth.
The only thing I really regret is denying that I ever seen that will. But anything else that's ever happened, you know, I stand by it. I don't regret it at all.
But Melvin's name will forever be linked to Howard Hughes, the man and the legend.